So I want to talk about this CD that I sold and this CD lot that I sold. So there's two here. I sold these yesterday and I held on to them until today, being the 13th of September, Wednesday, 2023, to share with you a little story about these two, hopefully to help you out. So this is a CD that I purchased back in May, and it sold yesterday, the 12th of September. So it took 4 months, a little less than 4 months, about 3.5 months to sell. Now, I purchased this in a Goodwill for $1. No, $2? $1. Let me see. Purchased it for $2 in a Goodwill I had not been in a while. Actually, I was going to it at that time, but it was a Goodwill that I realized, most Goodwills around this area anyway in Southern California, at least where I am, are not great for reselling books and media, but I do occasionally find some good stuff. They had a decent amount of CDs, not a lot, maybe 100 or so, and I went through all of them, and this is one of them that stood out to me. It is Korean. I don't know how to pronounce Yuna, but June, not sure. And so I used the Google Translate app to be able to figure out more information about this CD. Turns out that it was pretty rare, and it sold for $69.99 plus shipping. So $70 plus shipping, and only, about 3.5 months. And it was the only action or only movement I had on it. So I didn't have any offers. It just sat for that long and then sold for full price. Would you have looked this up if you saw it in Goodwill or another thrift store? My hunch is most resellers, even those that sell CDs, unless they really know about these kind of CDs, would have passed it up, especially if there's a ton of CDs to go through. This one stood out to me because, not just because it's Korean or it's foreign language, but just the picture on the front looks kind of unique and interesting. The fact that I could figure out, what it was, and to look it up on Discogs. You can also look it up by this number here, SRCD-3089, well, the letters and number. You can look it up on Discogs that way to figure out or get an idea of what it is, what its name is in English. Look it up on eBay, see if it's for sale on there. I believe when I looked this up on Discogs, it was going for good money, and there were not many copies. It's been a little while, but I use eBay and Discogs to figure this stuff out. So don't be scared to sell foreign language CDs. I've sold quite a few Chinese, Vietnamese, Japanese, and Korean CDs individually, as well as in lots. I've done more of the Vietnamese CDs in lots than anything else, but individually I've sold all those different languages. Of course, Spanish as well, but when it comes to different Asian languages, I recommend looking up certain ones. Not everyone is going to be worth money, of course, but this one was. So yes, you can find stuff in thrift stores, even in a Goodwill, even here in Southern California, to resell for good profit. The other one I wanted to share with you is this Jimmy Buffett CD lot. You may or may not know he passed away on September 1st. Today's the 13th. This sold yesterday, the 12th. So within less than 2 weeks after he passed. So all of these CDs I've accumulated in my store over, I don't know, a couple years at least. Some of these I've probably had on the shelf for a couple of years, but over time, as I get more CDs in, so as I get Gaylords of CDs only, of mixed media, and as I get donations, as I have bought CD lots over the years, etc., I will just come across different titles, different Jimmy Buffett titles, and I had a grand total of 29 different titles. So all of these are different Jimmy Buffett CDs, and so I decided to pull all of them, see how many I had that were individual or different titles, and turned out I had 29. I had a couple that were duplicates, but I just listed the individual ones and put it up on eBay yesterday in the morning for $299 plus shipping. Got an offer. I countered at $275 and I sold it for $275 plus shipping. So this is, if you've been watching my videos for a while, you know that I have a store. I have a store now for almost 4 years where I sell books and music and movies, TV shows, video games, etc. And I have a ton of CDs for sale there. I sell CDs every week in my store. And so when I get in big names and new titles like Jimmy Buffett, for example, I will put them out. Other ones, like if I come across Madonna, if I come across Cher, if I come across, Frank Sinatra, the Beatles, anyway, on and on and on, Pink Floyd, The Doors, all of these big either groups or big individual artists, I will put them out. And locally, they don't, sometimes they'll sit for a long time. And Jimmy Buffett, for whatever reason, I didn't sell that many of his over the years, last couple of years. And so they accumulated. And so I kind of use that as a way to build up a large selection, not only to sell locally in my store, but also when I get a big enough selection, I will often pull all of them and sell them on eBay. Now, it just so happened that he passed away, unfortunately, and at a relatively younger age. I think he was 76. And and so he was a massive artist who had made a lot of music, put out a lot of CDs, a lot of records. And it turned out that I had accumulated quite a collection here. I looked on eBay. The largest collection that I could find that had sold since he had died was 35 CDs. And that one sold and that was a bidding war that went for that one. I think that person should have not done bids. I mean, if that was like the first or second day after he had passed away, and they ended up getting $346 plus shipping. But I think if they had listed it way higher, it probably would have sold. I mean, they had even more than I had. If they listed it for like $500 and just sat there taking offers, I bet you they would have got more. But I put this out almost 12 days since he had passed away. And this is what happens with celebrities. So in my niche, which is, books. So if a really big author were to pass away, if a really big singer, if a really big actor, I've seen this happen a lot with music. So you can go back and think about famous, Tony Bennett died recently. I did not pull all my Tony Bennett's, but he died recently, and I remember when Kenny Rogers passed away. So, there's a lot of different, who was it? Eddie Van Halen passed away a few years ago. So a lot of artists will suddenly pass away, or, they're quite old, etc. So think of artists that are really much older now, that are big names, singers. If they were to pass away suddenly or from a long illness, etc., and you had a lot of their CDs or their records, but for me, it's going to be mostly CDs. There's going to be a peak in interest. So people are going to be willing. Number one, they're going to go, oh yeah, I don't have, this person's music or enough of it. Or I remember I used to love them, so now I want all of their music. And if you've got like this one, 29, then you can probably get some really good money for it, especially if it's a really well-known big artist that put out a lot of music. So if you look on eBay before he passed away and how much his CD lots were going for and how often they were going, I'm willing to bet they were going for much, much less and not selling as often. But this is just what happens. The same thing could be said for an actor. The same thing could be for a big author. Think about a huge author like Stephen King, for example. His books already go for great money. He's written tons and tons of books. Think about James Patterson. Well, he has way too many books out there. But just think about that, all these different people that if they suddenly were to pass away, that are famous celebrities, and especially if they're younger as well, but even if they're older, their stuff's going to go for great money. And think about, I'm blanking right now, Paul McCartney, right? If you were to suddenly die, think about all the music that he's produced between the Beatles and on his own as a solo artist. And if you got together a massive Beatles and Paul McCartney solo artist CD lot, you could probably sell it for a ton of money. So this was just sitting on my shelf, not selling at the store. And even since he died, no one came in and said, do you have any Jimmy Buffett? So I just pulled it and made a good sale. So keep that in mind, guys, that if you have the space and you start accumulating certain artists, that you can sell them for good money, even if they haven't passed away. If they're a well-known artist and you have a nice collection of their CDs, you can get some good money for sure. All right, guys, thanks for watching. See you in the next video. Take care.